Well, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are joining us from. Hello, hello. I am Amanda McCrossin, and I am so excited to be here for sadly the very last time here on Facebook for California Wines. But I think we've saved the best for last with this dessert display in front of me and with the wonderful Kate Ramos. So, welcome, Kate from Hola Jalapeño.
Thank you.
Um,
Hi,
I'm
everybody.
We're so excited to have you. And can you tell everyone a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Sure, absolutely. Hi, guys. My name is Kate Ramos. I write a food blog called Hola Jalapeño, and where I share Mexican-inspired recipes from my home in Southern California. I was previously was a chef in another life and also a pastry chef. So desserts are near and dear to my heart. So I'm very excited to be sharing these three recipes with you guys, and all of them can be found on my site, which is at holajalapeño.com. So thank you
I
so much for having me on, Amanda. This is going to be really exciting. I'm going to ask you about 10 million questions about what to pair
Fantastic.
with desserts.
Well, back at you on the dessert side because okay, so I will readily admit I only made myself one of these three recipes. I sort of fibbed with the others, but you sort of put out this gorgeous display, or I guess these three wonderful selections for. I think we're calling it the holidays, but really like this could be at least two of these could be for really any season. Maybe pumpkin pie would be something that we would save for the holiday season, but we're
Right.
talking about the holidays. There's going to be all sorts of different celebrations happening this year, especially. So, talk to
Absolutely.
me a little
Yeah.
bit about your approach when it comes to dessert. Are you someone that makes a lot of different things? Are you like, I make one really great thing? And then what are some of the recommendations that you can give for people who are going to be entertaining this holiday season?
Okay, well, first of all, what I love about these recipes, aside from the pumpkin pie, which is absolutely traditional, it's my mother's recipe, and it's like the classic pumpkin pie. But the other things I chose was a Mexican chocolate pudding, which I love for the holidays because one thing that stresses everyone out, including myself, is how to get everything done on time, like on time. You have the oven going at 9,000 miles an hour. You got tons of stuff on the stovetop. So the pudding you can make up to like 3 or 4 days in advance and put it in like these cute little individual containers and stick them in your fridge, and they're going to be ready for dessert whenever you are. And another great thing about them is, especially for this season when I know our gatherings are going to be a bit smaller, they serve like between 4 to 6 people. So it's a
Mm.
nice kind of scaled down recipe a little bit that I think maybe a lot of us are looking for this year when, most Thanksgivings we serve a ton of people. And so those recipes aren't really going to do this year for most people. So I love that recipe because it's one, make ahead, and two, is kind of scaled down, which is appropriate for this year. And also, make ahead is the ice cream recipe, which, generally anything you can make in advance, especially when it comes to dessert and that that's done, that is like the golden rule for me.
Yeah, I love the prep in advance, and I can definitely attest to the simplicity and the ability to make this delicious Mexican chocolate pudding ahead of time. I actually made it this morning before we went live, and I just like literally still in my pajamas and bathrobe, just like whipping up chocolate pudding. And I am not a chef. I am not someone that like finds herself handy in the kitchen. I try my very, very hardest, but for me, this was super easy. And I've loved this series, and I've loved being over on IG Live with our friend Aida, who's, given me
Hmm.
just a whole compendium of recipes to use throughout not just this holiday season, but just like in life in general. And it's been so much fun. And,
Yeah.
this is definitely one that I'm going to be adding to my portfolio of
Yay,
recipes.
good. Excellent. I mean, I
Yeah.
think when we're doing desserts for like a big meal or like a holiday, where you're going to have lots of different palettes and tastes, it's nice to have a wide range. So you have at least a little bit something for everybody. And so that's why I kind of love to have like a little bit of chocolate in there. The thing that we don't have today is a fruit dessert, which you could obviously always add.
Mhm.
But it's nice to have some sort of variety.
I agree. And I love that you've sort of given us three very different flavors that also sort of have a through line that can work together really well. And for me, I think, at the end of the meal, obviously we're going to want the traditional pie, but I also don't see any reason why the whole table has to be filled with nothing but pies. I love this
Right.
introduction of pudding. I love the ice cream. I love, the little handmade touches here and there. So, perfect way to end the meal. For me, Thanksgiving, is obviously about the savory stuff, but I look forward to the desserts so, so much. And, I find sometimes like, even though you're super stuffed, and I'm sure you can attest to this as well, like everyone always makes room for dessert on Thanksgiving.
Oh yeah. No, you're not going to skip dessert. That's like
No.
sacrilegious. You're going to eat until you don't feel good. And that's when you know that it's Thanksgiving.
That's right. And you've done it right. Welcome holidays. And then we can all work it off later in January with the Pelotons we all got for Christmas.
With the ones that we've got for the COVID that we've been sitting on.
Exactly.
In that spare bedroom.
Yeah. Well, we've been drinking a lot of wines throughout this series and pairing them with foods. So of course, we're talking about dessert today. We're going to pair the desserts with the dessert wines. So I will be adding that side of the conversation. Yeah. And I think we should start basically, we're going to let the wines sort of dictate how we go through this little series. Great. Because we're going to go into
really good selections. I'm so excited to hear because I know what the selections are, but I don't know which dessert they're paired with. So,
ooh, that's super fun. Okay, that's right. I didn't tell you.
No,
I just said expect some packages. Okay, so we're going to start with the latest and then work our way through, and that will dictate how this all goes. So the latest is going to be this bottle of bubbles here. So you already opened yours, but I think it is important. Since we're all going to be opening, our fair share of bubbles this holiday season, to give everyone just a little reminder on how to do this. Yeah, and while we love,
very much needed.
We love,
I'm going to pour mine.
Please do, and please take a sip. I love, how festive everybody loves to be with, the popping of the champagne or maybe the savoring of the champagne. It's also not the safest. And in a time when we're sort of all trying to avoid being at the hospital, maybe take a little precaution. So the way that we're going to properly open this is, one, make sure it's nice and cold. So the worst thing you can do is try to open a moderately temped bottle of sparkling. So the warmer it's going to be, the more explosive it's going to be, and the less control you're going to have. So make sure to get it as cold as you possibly can. Generally, I find 20 to 30 minutes in the freezer will do the trick. That'll get it nice and icy. If you can get it maybe to 40 minutes, that's usually better, but 20 minutes at minimum. So the first thing you're going to do is obviously take off this little top that I just took off here. Most of them will have the little pull tabs. Go ahead and use that. On the side, you're going to see there's this little key thing here. You're going to flip it down. And as you do that, you're always going to keep your palm on the very top of this. The one thing you don't want to do is ever take that off, because this can explode literally at any time. And I promise you it's happened to me. So you're going to flip this key down.
It's happened to me too. It's happened to me too.
It is the worst. It's so dangerous. And thankfully I haven't taken anyone's eye out, but hopefully that will stay the same. So you're going to twist this. Generally it's about 4 to 5 times. So keeping your hand on the bottle, twist 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then you're going to push out and pull here. So you have it nice and open. And then keeping your hand on top of here, you're just going to twist and hold from the bottom, keeping your hand up on here. And you're going to twist in the bottom, not from the top. You're just going to hold this here, and you're going to feel it start to twist and sort of get released. And you'll see over here that it's starting to come up a little bit. So you're going to want to keep doing that, keeping a lot of pressure on here so that it doesn't explode. And then when it gets to about a place where you feel like it's coming off, you're going to just put a little pressure and release. And amazing. As we like to gently say in the wine biz, and this is very professional terminology, we're looking for a nun's fart here. So a very quiet whisper. That is professional.
That was it. Yes.
That was it. So there you go. That is how you open your bubbles.
Not that I would know. Not that I would know.
I think that's the point, right? None of us would ever really know what that sounds like. So we're starting with a sparkling wine here. But this is not your typical sparkling wine. This is actually, you'll see in the very, where did that go here? On here, this is going to say Demi-Sec. So what does Demi-Sec mean? Well, it means a little bit sweet. So sweet, sec means sweet, demi, a little bit sweet. So instead of a dry sparkling wine, this is actually a sparkling wine that has a little bit of residual sugar on it. And the reason we like that is the first rule of pairing desserts is sweet with sweet. So you always want your dessert wine to be as sweet or more sweet than the dessert it's being paired with. So you don't, we love champagne, we love sparkling wine, but a lot of times, dry sparkling wines are just a little too dry to go with your delicious, delicious sweet desserts like the ones we have here. So this is a non-vintage Demi-Sec from J Vineyards. This is all coming from Sonoma County. Have you tasted it yet, Kate? Is it good?
It's absolutely delicious. I love it.
Yeah.
It definitely is not too sweet, but you can get that little tinge of sweetness. It's just perfect.
I'm so glad that you said that because it's exactly what we wanted. So this is going to be going with the pumpkin pie, which, as you might imagine, is sort of, yes, nailed it. I sort of let you guess.
Am I going to be right?
Yeah. So pumpkin pie, pumpkin is definitely a savory ingredient. We add quite a bit of sugar to it to get it to a nice level of sweetness to make it a dessert. But at the end of the day, it's a squash. It's got a lot of savory flavors, a lot of vegetable flavors, and we want to highlight that. And so we don't really want, there's not a ton of sugar in this particular dessert as compared to maybe some others. You get into apple pie territory, it can really, really get up there. The reason that we really like this is, one, it has great acidity. Two, it has really wonderful sort of savory, toasty, brioche, even some of those like sweet potato, butternut squashy flavors in there. And then three, it's got great acidity. So anytime we're talking about food pairing, the things that we want are obviously, we want them to match, but we also want there to be a nice balance of acidity. And that's what you get with the Demi-Sec like this.
Yeah, no, it's just perfect.
Yum.
I do taste that little touch of acidity, which just really makes it like so satisfying.
Yeah. And it's not overly sweet, to your point. This is not, super cloying. I think a lot of people think of dessert wine as being really, that sticky, sweet, kind of syrupy, like, globulous sort of dessert wine pairing. And that this is just not it. So if you're not someone that wants, really rich sort of Sauternes style, but you want just something at the end of the meal, this is an awesome way to go. So what you're going to be looking for is a sparkling wine that's going to say sec or demi-sec, something that's going to be a little bit sweet. The way that they do that is, after the secondary fermentation happens within bottle, because this is being made in the traditional method. So the way that champagne is made, where you add a little bit of yeast and sugar to get those bubbles to come back up right in the bottle, they cap it, they let it age for a little bit. And then when they expel that, they add what's called the dosage. And the dosage is a little bit heavier. So you're talking about, anywhere between 8 and 20 grams per liter. A dry style sparkling would be somewhere in the vicinity of about 4. So not, a ton more, but just enough to give it, that sweetness that we want to go with the pumpkin pie. So tell me about this pumpkin pie, because this is this, I do not have your recipe. I have the grocery store recipe, but I still pumpkin pie.
Mine is going to be better. No, I'm just kidding.
Of course it's going to be better.
So this recipe is on my site. I like I said before, this is our like classic family recipe. This is the one that my mother makes. Although she did tell me that she's gotten fancy and now she uses heavy cream instead of half and half. So, which I didn't know that. I would have made that today, but I used the traditional recipe that's on my site, which is half and half. And one thing I want to mention about pumpkin pie that I had trouble with just this week was, so I went to the grocery store to get all the ingredients to make all these desserts, right? I went to 2 stores and I could not find canned pumpkin, which happens this time of year. So I did not want to go to a 3rd store. So I just ended up getting a whole pie pumpkin, like a fresh pie pumpkin. Okay. And I used that to make the pie. And if this happens to anyone and you can't find canned pumpkin, it's so easy to make a pumpkin pie with a fresh pumpkin. You just take the pie pumpkin and cut it in half, scoop out the seeds and roast it for about an hour. Like you don't need to put anything on it. Just put it on a baking sheet. And then once it's really soft, you scoop that out and puree it in a food processor till it's really nice and smooth. And you use that instead of the canned pumpkin. So a can of pumpkin is usually like 1 3/4 cups. So that's basically all you need of the pumpkin puree to make your pumpkin pie.
And what size generally pumpkin? I mean, like, is it, you're like sort of
so there, they sell a pumpkin that's specifically labeled a pie pumpkin. It's sweeter and denser than your traditional jack-o'-lantern. So you don't.
I did not know that, so that's very helpful.
Yes. Yes. So look for those words on the, display. It'll say pie pumpkin, or sometimes it'll say sugar pie pumpkin. And that's a
Okay.
specific variety of pumpkin that you want to use to make the pie. If you can't find that, other things you could use would be like butternut squash, kabocha squash. Those
Hmm.
all have the same kinds of flavors. So there's no reason and no excuse that you can't make a pumpkin pie, especially if you can't find canned pumpkin, because you could even substitute sweet potatoes in the same
I
way.
love that. Yes, I had a sweet potato cheesecake the other day and it was super yummy. I
Oh
don't know if
yeah.
you have taken a bite of this with
No,
the
I'm
wine, but
going
you
to right now.
you absolutely should. It's
So
what
I
I love.
must top my pie with whipped cream. I don't know
Absolutely.
about you, but
No, do it. The one thing I was going to
but
add, as I'm chewing my food, is let you know, and I don't know how you feel about this, but when I make my whipped cream, especially if I know that I'm going to be pairing it with a dessert wine, sometimes I will
well, that's
sweeten
so
it
good
with a
together.
little bit of the dessert wine.
Oh, in the whipped cream.
Hmm.
Wow, that's a really
So
good tip. Does it come through pretty strong? I mean, can
no,
you
it's really
get into
subtle, but I
essence?
think it like, yeah, and I think just also because I will talk about this later. I made this pudding and I forgot to get the orange zest. The wine that we're going to be talking about, not to pair with that, but this Dolce back here has like a ton of orange zest in it. And like aromatically, it's just kind of explosive. And I actually subbed, I didn't have any orange. I totally forgot to get it at the grocery store. I just subbed in a little bit of that instead of orange zest.
Oh,
So I will
that's so
often
smart.
cook with my dessert wine. So, you know, as you're thinking about making dessert, and I am not a chef, so, please defer to the professionals for any sort of, but I will
No,
always
it's a
try
great
to,
idea.
especially when I'm cooking, like it's like something we do for savory dishes, like when you're making a sauce, always try to incorporate the wine you're going to have in that sauce. Same sort of idea. So I always try to just, like an ounce or two, you don't need a lot, just to sort of like, it's barely going to be noticeable, but like the through lines will be there, and aromatically it'll just sort of tie together a little bit better.
Hmm.
This is super tasty, and the reason I like it is when I think about when I think about wine pairings and dessert pairings specifically, I'm thinking about the wine as a sauce. So I'm thinking about what I want more of. And like, obviously, I'm not going to sauce a pumpkin pie, but like, what I want more of to come out of this is like all of those great baking spices, a little bit more of
Yeah.
like the honey, the goldenness, all of the richness that has. And so that's coming through, and this wine is bringing that out a lot more. I
Yeah.
also find this pumpkin pie is delicious, but it can be, it's a dense, really sort of rich, even though it's not overly sweet, it's really dense and rich. And so the sparkling wine element with all that great acidity sort of cleans all that up and keeps your palate refreshed.
It is. It is the ultimate pairing. I think my recipe doesn't have a ton of spice. It's not heavily spiced, but there's a
Mm-hmm.
little bit of cinnamon and ginger in it. And
Mm-hmm.
normally, if you just eat it by yourself, it seems like a very well-rounded flavor. You get all the pumpkin, and you know that there's spice in there. But for some reason, drinking it with the wine, I can pick out those like ginger and cinnamon elements, which is so
Mm-hmm.
interesting. And I wonder if it's just the bits of acid, the little bit of acid that kind of like cleans out some of that fattiness.
A lot of times wine will definitely do that. The acid tends to, like, when it cleans up your palate, allows other things to highlight. But the other thing that's happening as well is, one, sugar really, when paired with flavors, this is also why we add dosage to sparkling wine, is because the sugar actually amplifies a lot of things. It's a spice, not really, but it's a spice in the way that you would add salt to bring out flavors and sugar to bring out flavors. It's the same reason we do that with sparkling wine. The dosage is added to enhance the flavors. It's really what kind of brings it up. So it's that. And then also remember, this is being aged in oak. And what does oak do to a wine? Well, it's going to give it all those baking spices. It's going to give you cinnamon, clove, cardamom, which is why, when you're thinking about all of these pie dishes, and especially, your apple pies, your pumpkin pies, your sweet potato pies, you're going to want something that's actually been aged in a little bit of oak, because it's going to enhance those flavors. And so
Yeah.
interchangeably, we could do the Dolce with this pumpkin pie and it would be delicious. My issue is it's already so rich and dense that it's actually a little bit too overwhelming for it. And I like the acidity of this
Yeah, and I
Demi-Sec
love
sparkling.
the bubbles too. The bubbles just really
Yeah,
add such a nice like cleansing.
totally.
So you can eat like 7 pieces and it would be totally fine.
Well, that's the dangerous part with pairing these wines, is a lot of times that's what happens. It's like cheese and wine. Like, you just like what came first, the chicken or the egg? Like, you don't know where to stop because it's like a merry-go-round, but you never want to get
Yeah,
out.
exactly.
Um,
Yeah.
Well, I could eat this all day, but we should migrate to the next dish, and that is going to be that gorgeous canela or cinnamon. I probably didn't say that right. Cinnamon ice cream. So you can tell me how to say
Canela,
it. Canela.
You said it right, canela. I'm actually going to go grab it from my freezer because
oh, great.
I want it to melt. So
well, that's very wise of you. I have it in front of me. This is not the real ice cream. This is the grocery store version. And what we are going to be doing with this is pairing this delicious ice cream with Dolce. And I'm sure some of you are already familiar with Dolce. This is probably one of the most famous sweet dessert wines in California, maybe in the world. This is actually the only winery in California, I think in North America as well, that only does dessert wine. So Dolce, that's all they make.
I did not know that.
Yeah, so they're owned by Niente. They are sister wineries. I actually don't know if it's a sister or if it's affiliate, but they're affiliated. But you can go to Niente, you can see the Dolce caves. And what's really cool about Dolce is, have you ever heard of Sauterne, the very famous Sauterne? So Sauterne is a very famous dessert wine, famous wine in general, but probably the most famous dessert wine in the world. And the reason it's so famous, the reason it's so delicious, is it's affected by what we call botrytis, or a noble rot. So yes, the noblest of the rot is called botrytis. And so basically what happens is this botrytis, which, really can only occur in certain climates. It's really, really sort of fickle in the way that it presents itself, but it loves humidity. And so it needs the perfect setting. And so in Bordeaux, where there's a lot of fog and there's a lot of moisture in the air, botrytis does really, really well. And so they found this little plot of land in Coombsville, which is, one of the most southern AVAs in Napa Valley, sort of on the eastern side, where they get a lot of fog trapped sort of in the early part of the season, but then it's nice and dry later on, which is really what you want, because botrytis, in order for it to get started, it needs a lot of that moisture to kick it into action. But then you don't want that to necessarily continue, because it's going to rot out the grape. You want it to be nice and dry. And so what happens is the botrytis goes into the grape and it literally dehydrates it. So it forms little cracks in the skin, takes out all of the water. And so all that's really left is that nice, sort of crystallized sugar. And so when they harvest the grapes for these wines, they're not harvesting it cluster by cluster. They're harvesting it grape by grape by grape. So they're literally making passes multiple times throughout the season, looking for those perfectly botrytized grapes. And so that's what you have here with this Dolce. Yeah, so this is technically late harvest, but more importantly, this is a botrytized sweet dessert wine made from 2 grapes, primarily Semillon, but then a little bit of Sauvignon Blanc, which is going to add the brightness. And so what you have here is this, you smell it and it literally smells like honey. They call it liquid gold. I mean, it smells rich and decadent. It smells like apricots and
it's just the most gorgeous color.
It is so beautiful. I mean, look how golden and beautiful and reflective that is.
It is just beautiful.
Yeah. And so, when you've got cinnamon ice cream that's a little bit lighter, still pretty decadent, but, a little bit, not quite as intense as that rich pumpkin pie, you can sort of beef it up a little bit with something like this. And because this sees a significant amount of new French oak, and you've got the cinnamon here in this ice cream, this is why you can pair it with a dessert wine like this that has all of those rich sort of honeyed, textural, wonderful layers, but then also has the elements of the new French oak that are highlighting all of the cinnamon, because that's really what the main focus of this ice cream is, right? We want that cinnamon to come out.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, this is a gorgeous wine. I'm gonna taste them both together.
Yes. And you're doing it in the right orders, the way that you want to do it. Not that there's really any rules when it comes to food and wine. Just take a bite, so sort of let it settle for a moment, and then take a sip. And away we go. And do you see how that cinnamon just sort of comes back a little bit, but it had that layer of golden honey? Man, it really comes back, huh?
It's just beautiful. And I don't know what kind of cinnamon is in your ice cream, because it's store-bought, right?
I bought it.
Yeah, no, and that's totally fine. I just want to say in particular, because this is the homemade canela ice cream that the recipe's on my site, and it uses Ceylon cinnamon, which is very common in Mexican cooking, and it's a little bit different than the cassia cinnamon, which is more common, which is like the cinnamon that if you buy ground cinnamon in the grocery store. It's cassia. It most likely is a variety of cinnamon called cassia cinnamon, which is a little bit more pungent. It has like a more peppery spice. And the Ceylon cinnamon that I use to make this ice cream is way more mellow, but it's so lovely with this wine because it's like you're kind of like floating on this woody undertones that are found in the cinnamon and in the wine. It's just beautiful.
Well, I'm sure my cinnamon ice cream does not have the same kind of cinnamon that yours does, because yours sounds delicious and wonderful.
It's equally as good. Yeah.
It is delicious. And pairs beautifully with this wine. The one thing I want to say is, as you're serving dessert wines, remember they are generally a lot higher in alcohol. And because they're a lot richer and sweeter, you're not going to be pouring the same amount that you would for a standard glass of wine. So a standard glass of wine, anywhere between 4 and 6 ounces. Something like this, you're going to be about 2 to 3. And that's really all you need. Any more than that, and you're probably going to end up with a worse headache than you already are maybe going to have.
It's a bit of sugar.
It's a bit of sugar. Yeah.
Well, one thing I wanted to mention about the ice cream real quick is some people may be intimidated on making homemade ice cream, and I totally get it. But this recipe I made yesterday, and when I first developed the recipe, I used to have an ice cream churner, an ice cream machine. And then I realized I got rid of it sometimes. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to do this anyway. And actually it turned out beautifully. So I want everybody to know that if you don't have an ice cream machine, that doesn't mean you cannot make homemade ice cream. Because what I did was while the base was freezing and I just put it in like a loaf pan like this.
Okay. Oh, nice.
And while it's freezing, all you have to do is take it out of the freezer like every hour or so for the first 4 or 5 hours, and just beat it like as hard as you can with a whisk, and then just stick it back in there, and it aerates it more than enough to make a beautiful homemade churned ice cream.
Oh, that's a great tip. I had no idea that you could do it without. So ice cream has been around much longer than electricity. So
this is very true. So they've been making it a long time before the churners were invented.
And so always in the pan, should you do it in a pan or a bowl, or does it like just more like space?
You know, what I really like about doing it in a loaf-sized pan like this, and this is a smaller batch of ice cream, which is also another nice thing if you're going to have a smaller get-together this year, or if you're like me and you have no willpower, so it's nice to have like a smaller amount that you're dealing with. But what's nice about doing it in a loaf pan is it's deep, so you can get a really nice sized scoop out of a pan by just like pulling it along like that. Okay. You know, and if it was in a bowl, it's kind of more challenging to get like a really nice scoop, although a bowl would totally work. But essentially, most importantly, you just want something that's a little bit deep that will give you some room to kind of really beat it up.
I love that. I will definitely try that, because my sister just told me today that she ordered ice cream from a local creamery, but now I kind of want to like try my hand at it to have
it is actually
an ice cream
really
throwdown.
Pretty simple. And the nice thing with the ice cream is either you can eat it alone, or you can put it on top of your pie, or you make a little ice cream sundae if you want. I mean, it's very versatile as far as how you're going to serve it. So
beautiful. And since this ice cream is obviously cold, you're going to want this wine to be cold as well. I mean, you could serve this at about 55 degrees cellar temp, but really, because it is so rich and so viscous, we want it to sort of get up in temperature to highlight the brightness. And also, sort of I don't want to bring down the temperature of the ice cream so much.
Yeah. Would you put it in the freezer?
You could, yeah, for sure. It might be wise. So I would stick this in the freezer. Like if you're sitting down for Thanksgiving, for like turkey, stick it in the freezer then. And then by the time you're ready for dessert, this is a 375. So just keep an eye on it, because it will freeze, not entirely because it is so viscous. And it is a little bit higher in alcohol. So yeah, I mean, this is, wow, they harvest this at 34.9 degrees brick sugar. Sorry, I just got distracted reading that. I was like, wow, that's high. Yeah, it's just as a comparison, it's generally for white wines, you're at about 23 degrees bricks. And so they're at about 35 here. So definitely higher. They're leaving on the vine higher. But yes, I would say leave this in the freezer. I was looking for the alcohol, 13.5, so not crazy high. Actually pretty low for what I expected. Leave it in the freezer for about 30 minutes. So, I mean, depending on how long your Thanksgiving dinner is. I know like for some cousins, like, you know, they'll sit there for 3 hours and like don't leave it in for that long. But I'd say, yeah, I'd say like 30 to 45 minutes, like in the freezer, you're probably fine. Just keep an eye on it and make sure it's not like crystallizing inside of there. But yeah, I mean, if you have space in the fridge.
Yeah, once you open it, then how long can it be opened?
It's a good question. So dessert wines, that's the other really nice part about dessert wines, is they will stay longer because of the sugar. So sugar acts as a preservative. So you could leave this in your fridge. You know, make sure it's away from light. Try to keep it at that constant temperature. So if it was in the fridge and you got it cold, try to maintain that same temperature. You know, don't keep it in the freezer, keep it in the fridge. You know, get a nice cork in there and just, you know, try to get it down as much as you can. But then you're probably good to go for about 2 to 3 weeks. I'd say they probably could stay a little bit longer. What you're going to lose, and they're not going to go bad, it's just what you're going to lose is that great acidity. And with a wine that's, you know, really rich and sort of viscous and, you know, not cloying, but, you know, has that intensity, the brightness is really what we're after. And that's really what makes this wine so special, is it does retain its acidity. So as much as it is, you know, really, really sweet and sugary, it has great acidity for balance. And no matter what wine we're talking about, whether it's a dry wine or a sweet wine, we're always looking for balance, and acidity is always going to give you that balance. It's hard to put this down. I mean, I love Dolce. I think it's interesting. I brought it out the other day, and my boyfriend saw it, and he was like, "Oh, I haven't seen Dolce in so long. Like, we used to love that stuff." He worked at the Charleston Grill at the Charleston Place Hotel in South Carolina, and you know, many, many years ago. And he was like, "Man, we used to love that stuff. Like, I haven't had it in so long." So this is such a beloved wine, and I think, you know, just such a perfect representation of something that's really decadent, that, you know, it's only a 375. So you're going to get, you know, enough for well, I guess it depends how big your family is, but definitely if you've got about 10 people, this is more than enough to go around. And there, you know, it's not inexpensive. It's a very laborious and expensive wine to make. So this is $85 for the half bottle. So, you know, not inexpensive. So if you're adding holidays. For sure. And you know, just a little bit of a splurge. And, you know, like I said,
I can actually see, like, if you don't want to make a dessert, but you're thinking of doing something like cheese for dessert, or
for sure,
like some cheese and nuts and dried fruit, like this would be so lovely with that.
Actually, all of these wines would be, and I'm glad that you brought that up, because we talked about cheese last week, and that is a perfect thing to talk about, because we had cheese and we had a dessert wine go with one of the cheeses, and it was wonderful. But, you know, cheese and dessert wine is really delicious. You have that like sort of salty, savory, sweet thing going on.
It's like my favorite dessert, I believe. You know, to have like a little bit of dessert wine and like a little bit of cheese. It's totally, you're not really hungry anymore, but you want like a little something sweet. It's just perfect.
Yeah, no, I agree. Dessert wine's delicious. It's highly overlooked. I think, you know, if you're thinking about, you know, the start, the middle, and the finish, you've got to finish with some sort of dessert wine. We've got chocolate next. I don't know what your chocolate lover situation is. I actually am not a huge chocolate lover, but I love this chocolate pudding so much.
I'm so glad that you made it.
Me too.
It is one of our favorites too, and we actually make it all the time, not just for the holidays. But the reason that I chose it was, like I said, it's a make ahead situation, which I love. Anytime I'm having any kind of dinner party, if you can make the dessert and just like have it done, that's key. And then you could look like a superstar when you're like, "Oh, I also made dessert," you know, but you made it like 3 days ago. You know, you look really good. And I love to put it in these like little individual, I have these Le Creuset like little cups with the lid. And it's adorable, you know. But you can also serve this pudding warm, which is like, oh, that's like a serious treat. So if you feel
I may have had a spoonful of that.
The moment of, it's like the most gorgeous chocolate sauce pudding experience, you know.
Yes.
But it's great to make ahead and make it, you know, and stick it in the fridge and have it done too.
It was also like kind of fun to make and sort of soul satisfying in a way. Like, I don't know if you saw my Instagram story.
I think so too.
I was like stirring away. I was like, this just feels so
very
good.
Meditative, and
it's
like,
totally
it's nice
meditative.
To have those things where you cannot leave it, you know, like you have to actually just be there.
Full attention.
The thing. Yeah, it's really nice. I felt the same way. I'm glad you felt that way too.
It is. It was like the most meditative thing I've done all day. And it, like, as you add the chocolate, it starts to intensify and the color gets richer and deeper. And
And
you're
the
like, it
aroma is
smells so
like,
good.
while it's cooking, oh my gosh, it's
It
just
smells so good.
so heady with all the spice and the orange zest. And
Yes.
yeah,
I love it.
agreed.
Well, we're getting into chocolate land, which means we're getting into red sweet wine territory. So anytime we're dealing with chocolate, a lot of times what you're going to want to head into are the ports, the late harvest Zinfandels, anything that's red and sweet typically is what you're going to want for chocolate. Of course, if you were to pair this Dolce, it would still be delicious, but chocolate and port and red wine tend to go a little bit better together. So we've talked about two different styles of sweet wines thus far. We talked about the Demi-Sec sparkling, which, that happens because of the dosage they had after. We talked about the Botrytis late harvest dessert wine, and now we're talking about port. And so the main difference between port and these other two are this is actually fortified. And what fortified means is they're arresting the fermentation part of the way through. So generally when they get to, maybe it's at about 10 bricks. So, a nice amount of residual sugar is still left in that original base wine. What they do is they hit it with a neutral grain spirit or something like a brandy to literally stop fermentation from happening. So all those little good yeasties that were eating up all the sugar and converting into alcohol, they're killed off. And the wine that's resulting is half alcohol and half sweetness. And now because you've added that fortified spirit, it also amplifies the amount of alcohol. And so fortified wines are going to be the highest in alcohol generally when it comes to dessert wines. Port, of course, it comes from Portugal. So this is not coming from Portugal. This is actually California port coming from Louis Martini. So they're calling it port because it's port styled, but it is not made from the traditional port grapes, which are like Touriga Nacional and Tinteroys. This is actually made from more of a California heritage grape called Petit Syrah, which I'm sure you're familiar with. So this is 100% Petit Syrah coming from the estate vineyard that sort of surrounds Louis Martini Winery, which I used to work directly across the street from at Press. So if you're driving up Highway 29 and you see Louis Martini on the right, it's that vineyard that sort of surrounds it. So beautiful Petit Syrah that they're making.
Yeah, I had no idea that they were making port. I didn't know that. Is that a new thing?
It's teeny tiny. No, they've made dessert wine for a very long time. This was something that has been going on for a while. I think this specific one is relatively new, but they only make a tiny bit of it. I think it's only like available at the winery or on the website. So not crazy expensive. This is about $45. But a lot of times if you dig a little deeper into a winery's website, you'll find that there's some sort of like special dessert wine that they make. And they just, it's so difficult and so, like I said, labor intensive and expensive to make a dessert wine that a lot of times they don't really advertise it because frankly, it's like kind of a loss leader for so many wineries. They're like, we just make it because it's fun to have.
It's just a passive
yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And I suspect that that's probably the case. But these are also, ports can really age. So if you don't want something that's quite as intense as this is going to be, and I don't know if you've tasted it, but holy moly, it is intense.
But the aroma
and it's rich.
Is so seriously addicting.
Mm-hmm. So what I love is that this actually smells like Petit Syrah. So a lot of times, it has that sort of like raisinated, slightly oxidative quality on the palate, but it actually smells like Petit Syrah. It smells like a red wine. It doesn't smell so raisiny, which port can often smell a little bit raisinated. And so for people that really, want to finish with some sort of red wine, especially if you've been having some wonderful red wines throughout your Thanksgiving meal, it's a great segue to sort of stay with that color. So have you taken a bite of your Mexican chocolate pudding?
No, because I don't know what happened to my spoon. So So again, I love whipped cream on all things. Some people are like ice cream.
I love that about you.
People, and I am. I need a little bit of whipped cream on my pudding as well, and it's nice because you can make a big batch of whipped cream, and then people can put it on whatever they want. But I also like to add a little bit of fruit, just to give it kind of like a tartness to cut through some of that really rich chocolate flavors, and I have some raspberries here. But this time of year, it would be fun to even do like a little pomegranate or something like that, just to add like a little bit of freshness, because it is super duper rich. But I'm gonna use this whipped cream spoon to give
it's rich, but it doesn't feel overwhelming.
You don't think so?
I don't think it's, I mean, I don't know, maybe I'm just ready for some chocolate pudding in my life. What we haven't really talked about is bitter. And so that's really the one element of our taste buds that we haven't really come across yet in our journey throughout these different desserts. And so bitter is really what we're talking about when we're talking about chocolate, we're talking about port. So why do these two things work? Well, the bitter is really what brings it together. So port, because it is generally made from red grapes, tends to have a little bit more tannin, tends to have a little bit more of that bitter component. And because that chocolate is bittersweet chocolate, it tends to pair better with the red wines. White wines, you don't get the phenolics. So bitter is really coming from the phenolics of the grape. It's coming from the skins. And because white wine is pressed off of its skins, you're not generally getting that from white wines. You are getting it from the red wines. And so that phenolic bitterness is really what sort of like, it kind of just like not amplifies the bitter, but it like, that's where the common ground is. And then from there, it just sort of like brings it up and brings it down depending on what style of port you're having and how sweet your chocolate pudding is. Isn't it tasty? They go so beautifully together.
No, it's really great. I was curious to see whether the port was going to kind of overwhelm the spices that are in the pudding, but it doesn't. It really kind of just heightens them a little bit.
Yeah. And I think again, like it's that bitterness. So this doesn't have a massive amount of acidity, but it does have that like great sort of anchor, that phenolic bitterness that we really want. It is,
I love. Yeah. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say that like the Dolce was lovely, but it does kind of coat your mouth a little bit.
Totally.
And I'm not getting that with the port, which is really nice because it kind of is cleansing after you have this like rich pudding. So that's really lovely too.
I find with fortified wines, even though they are fairly decadent, they actually have a lot of lift in them and brightness because they are fortified. There's literal like green spirit in there. And so you think about, like vodka or brandy cleaning up your palate. It's sort of the same deal. Just got to be careful. I mean, the alcohol in this is going to be 18.2%. So as compared to, so don't, drink a whole glass and think you're going to be okay for the rest of the night. So really small quantities.
Because when I was getting ready for today, I was like, oh no, I don't know if I have the right glassware. I see that you're using a wine glass. I found these old like
so sweet. I love that
glasses.
Perfect.
I think they were my grandmother's. And then I also have this glass, which I don't know. I was like, is that appropriate for dessert wine? It's like
that looks like that's kind of sweet. Yeah.
But I thought, I wasn't really sure actually. And I thought, what do you serve these things in? Does it matter?
Well, no, what you're using is perfect. So, I'm unfortunately at my parents' home here and they don't have proper port and dessert glasses. So I'm using these. Especially Thanksgiving, I think a lot of you are at home, maybe are not going to have as many people as you normally have. But when it comes to Thanksgiving, I'm of the mind that like simple is better. And so I try not to break out any sort of extraneous glassware during that time. So it's basically like, this is your glass. You hold onto it for the night. It doesn't matter what you're drinking. You're going to keep it. And I try to keep it stemless, usually on the smaller side of things. So like the stemless tumblers, like be it French or Italian or even just like a stemless wine glass, I try to keep them on the smaller side, around 4 to 5 ounces, because it tends to like slow people down. And so that's the glass that I would just continue using for dessert wine if it's Thanksgiving. Now, on normal circumstances, what you have is perfect. So a small sort of like 3 to 4 ounce glass where you're going to fill it about halfway. It's going to look nice and full. And it really just is about the visual. This does not look visually appealing. This looks like I'm at the dregs of my glass right now. So normally, no, I would not serve in this big bowl of a glass.
Okay. Like if you don't have this,
for sure,
it's fine if just in a regular wine glass.
Yeah, no, in a regular wine glass. Really, vessels for me are important and they definitely can enhance the experience. But I'm also not I'm not handicapped, nor am I dogmatic about, what stems I'm using when it comes to wine. It's just, for me, it's about the enjoyment and the company and the food. And so many times, are you going to lose 20%? Maybe, but you have to sort of weigh those pros and cons when in any situation.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm with you for sure.
Yeah. Well, we had 3 very delicious desserts that I'm probably going to try to sneak out of here later and eat all of by myself, which is going to be a terrible disaster. What did we miss? What did we not talk about? We talked about, this gorgeous Demi-Sec J Vineyard sparkling that went with our, my grocery store purchase pumpkin pie. You are very delicious family recipe. Yes. Well, we should talk about crust. Did you buy your crust or did you make your crust?
No, I make my crust. You can buy a crust, store-bought crust. And actually, I made a traditional all butter pie crust. But when I was making it, I was like, I actually think for pumpkin pie that I like a crumbly graham cracker crust or something like that even better, because it is so creamy that it's nice to have that textural contrast. So if you you're intimidated by making a all butter pastry crust, to make a homemade graham cracker crust is really nothing more than smashing some graham crackers together and mixing it with butter and pressing it into the pan. So, and
Okay.
I kind of actually prefer that. It's not traditional, but I think it's really delicious and much easier. Or you can go the store-bought route as well. Or you can just put the custard, the pumpkin custard, in a little cups, like something like this, and just bake it without the crust. And you can still, it's like crustless pumpkin pie.
I like it.
So that's another option if you're not into making crust, if that it does intimidate you. But if you do decide to go the full route, a pie like a custard pie, like a pumpkin pie, does need to be blind baked. So you have to, you're going to roll it out and put it in your pie pan, and then you want to bake it with nothing in it, so that you get that really nice crisp texture. Because if some people just pour the custard right into the raw pie crust and bake it like that, and it's fine, it bakes, but then you end up kind of like with this chewy, a little bit like gummy crust. We've all had that pumpkin pie. Sure. Where you're like scraping the pumpkin out of the crust.
It's like stuck up in your gum.
Yeah. So that's why that happens, is because the crust wasn't par baked for at least like 15 minutes, just to give a nice little crispness to it before you add the custard, because the custard's wet and the pie crust is wet. So then you have like this wet on wet situation that just never goes away. So definitely that's my tip on making pumpkin pie with the all butter crust, is to definitely make a little par bake the crust before you put the custard in.
Excellent tip. Then we went to our cinnamon ice cream and had a little Dolce with that. Reminder, get this nice and cold. Obviously, your ice cream can be made not necessarily in an ice cream maker, which I did not know. That was a super fun fact. You can make it in your pan. And then we finished with the Mexican chocolate pudding, which I think was maybe my favorite, maybe because I made it. Mexican chocolate pudding. Homemade is always best. With the Louis Martini port. This is non-vintage. I should actually mention this is a Solera, so this is actually a combination of many vintages. So literally they take like, if you had like 2015 on the top, then you'd have 2014, 2013, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, and they just keep kind of pouring into each other. And so what you're left with here is a combination of everything from above. And so that's what a Solera is. Yeah, it's kind of cool. What else do we need to talk about? It is Thanksgiving next week. It's a week from today. So start getting your stretchy pants out. I don't know how much you eat on Thanksgiving, but I certainly eat a lot. And yeah, I think we're good to go. We've covered our board with our cheese board. We've talked about some savory dishes with Terry Turner. We've finished it up with dessert. So by now, if you guys don't have all that you need for Thanksgiving and for the holiday season, I don't know what to tell you. This is all we got. This is the whole show. And I think we finished with a bang.
I'm super excited. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for having me on. This was so much fun. I learned a ton about dessert wines, and I cannot wait to dig in.
Thank you so much. I cannot wait. Oh, the one thing I was going to ask you, can I reheat this? Can this be warmed up again or no? I'm cold now.
Not really.
Okay.
Yeah.
So once it's cold, it's cold.
You can eat it warm. Yeah, because it has the cornstarch, and so once you reheat cornstarch, it starts to break down. So it would just be soupy. And if you
Okay.
want chocolate soup, then yes, you can do that.
All right.
100%.
So we're serving it cold. Note to self. All right. Well, I will eat my chocolate pudding cold and I will love it. And I will see you guys tomorrow on IG Live with Aida Molenkamp, who will be joining us from California Grown. And she's got one other recipe. So if for some reason, we're bringing the fruit component. So we didn't have fruit today, but she's bringing you fruit tomorrow. And we are going to be talking about dessert and wine pairings, because why not? And it'll be our last time. Actually, no, that will not be our last time. We have one more after that. But it was our last time here today. And it's been a pleasure the past couple of months to be here on Facebook Live with everyone. And Kate, thank you so much for being here and finishing up this series with us.
Thank you. This was such a great time. I really loved it.
Oh, good. I'm so glad. I loved it too. We'll see you soon, and happy holidays, everyone.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Bye.